Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about waste production. Never refuse to reuse. See, each year the UK produces quite literally a mountain of waste, over 400 million tons of it, and household waste continues to grow at a rate of 3% per year. Virtually everything we use creates varying degrees of waste throughout its life cycle. There is waste associated with the extraction, harvesting, manufacturing or transport of materials, waste associated with using a product, for example, a car using oil or a toy using batteries, and finally the negative impacts of waste disposal. So today we'll talk about all those negative impacts and the types of waste. So first of all, we should know what is waste? Waste or wastes, these are the unwanted or unusable materials. Waste is any substance which is discarded after primary use or is worthless, defective or of no use to the people. And in fact, a byproduct by contrast is a joint product of relatively minor economic value. So this waste may become byproduct, joint product or resource through an invention that raises a waste product's value above zero. Examples include there are municipal solid waste, which is also known as household trash or refuse, hazardous waste, wastewater such as sewage which contains bodily waste, feces and urine, and surface runoff, radioactive waste and others. So we will be discussing them in detail. For example, a natural part of life cycle, waste occurs when any organism returns substances to the environment. Living things take in raw materials and excrete waste that are recycled by other living organisms. However, humans produce an additional flow of material residues that would overload the capacity of natural recycling processes. So, these waste must be managed in order to reduce their effect on our aesthetics, health and environment. See, solid, fluid, hazardous and non-toxic waste are generated in our households, offices, schools, hospitals and industries. No society is immune from day-to-day issues associated with waste disposal. How waste is handled often depends on its source and characteristics, as well as local, state and federal regulations that govern its management. Practices generally differ for residences and industries in urban and rural areas and for developed and developing countries. Now, there are different definitions of waste. UN Environment Program, United Nations Environment Program has a separate definition. So, this first definition is according to UNEP. UNEP is your United Nations Environment Program. So, according to Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movements of Hazardous Waste and Their Disposal of 1989, Article 2.1, it says, waste are substances or objects which are disposed of or are intended to be disposed of or required to be disposed of by the provisions of national law. So, according to it, it depends upon the national law how you dispose the waste. Then there is this definition by European Union. They define waste as an object the holder discards, intends to discard or is required to discard. For more structural description of the waste directive, you have to see the European Commission summary. You can just refer to it, but just for the different definitions according to different organizations, this is how they define wastes. Now, there are different types of waste also. There is household waste, commercial waste and demolition waste. So, this comes under municipal waste. Next is your hazardous waste, which include the industrial waste. Biomedical waste include your clinical wastes. Special hazardous waste, it includes your radioactive waste, explosive waste, electronic waste, which is also known as e-waste. Now we will discuss these wastes in detail. What are they? So let's start with municipal solid waste. Municipal solid waste, which is commonly known as trash or garbage. So this is known in United States and it is known as rubbish in Britain. It is a waste type which consists of everyday items, everyday things you use in your daily life. Those are discarded by the public. So garbage here can also refer to specifically to the food waste also. As in a garbage disposal, the two are sometimes collected separately because we have different bins, different color bins for different kind of waste also. Although this kind of waste may originate from number of sources, so there could be different sources also. That has nothing to do with a municipality. The traditional role of municipalities in collecting and managing these kind of waste have produced the particular etymology municipal. So this municipal waste does not mean that the municipality has to deal with it or it is a household thing. It is just a traditional etymology. So here if we talk about the composition of municipal solid waste, it varies greatly from municipality to municipality and it changes significantly with time. In municipalities which have well developed waste recycling system, the waste stream mainly consists of intractable waste such as there could be plastic film and non-recyclable packaging materials. At the start of 20th century, the majority of domestic waste in the UK consisted of coal ash from open fires, and in developed areas without significant recycling activity, it predominantly includes your food wastes, market waste, yard waste, plastic containers and product packaging materials and other miscellaneous solid waste from residential, commercial, institutional and industrial sources. Now, most of the definitions of municipal solid waste do not include your industrial waste, agricultural waste or medical waste, radio waste or sewage sludge. Waste collection is performed by municipality within a given area. The term residual waste relates to waste left from household sources containing materials that have not been separated out or sent for processing. So waste can be classified in several ways, but there is a typical classification also. We will discuss that later. But now let's come to the commercial waste. So commercial waste, it consists of the waste from premises used mainly for the purposes of trade or business. So it is also known as business waste, or for the purpose of sport, recreation, education or entertainment, but it excludes your household, agricultural and industrial waste. So you can see the classification here. In your commercial waste, these are excluded because these were already coming, like household waste was coming under your municipal waste, and we have different criteria and types for agricultural and industrial waste. So business cover the commercial waste and industrial waste types sometimes. Generally, businesses are expected to make their own arrangements for the collection, treatment and disposal of their waste. Waste from their smaller shops and trading estates where local authority waste collection agreement are in place will generally be treated as municipal waste. And sometimes if it comes under municipality, then it depends from the area to area. Next is your demolition waste. Demolition waste is waste debris from destruction of buildings, roads, bridges or other structures. The debris collected from there varies in their composition, but major components by weight in the US, so we are taking US as standard, they include concrete, wood products, asphalt, shingles, brick and clay. There is a potential to recycle many elements of demolition waste. So now if we talk about the disposal of demolition waste, before demolition these debris are extracted. There is a contamination from lead, asbestos or different hazardous materials that must be resolved first. So hazardous materials must be disposed of separately according to the different federal regulations or national laws of different countries. So demolition debris can be disposed of in either construction and demolition debris landfills. Alternatively, these debris may also be sorted and recycled. So sorting may happen as destruction of the demolition site off-site at a sorting location or at construction and demolition recycling center. So once these are sorted, materials are managed separately and they are recycled accordingly. Next we'll talk about your industrial waste. So now industrial waste is the waste which is produced by industrial activity, which includes the materials those are rendered useless during the manufacturing processes which is undergoing in the factories or industries, or for example in the mills or mining operations. Now types of industrial waste include dirt, there could be gravel, masonry, concrete, scrap, metal oil, solvents, chemicals, scrap, lumber, and even the vegetable matter from the restaurants. So industrial waste may be solid, it could be liquid, it could be gaseous. So it may be hazardous or non-hazardous waste also. If in case it is hazardous waste, it may be toxic, ignitable, it can catch fire, it could be corrosive, it could be reactive or radioactive. This kind of industrial waste may pollute the air, the soil or nearby water sources also, eventually ending up in the sea. So industrial waste is often mixed into municipal waste, making accurate assessments difficult. So an estimate, if we talk about US, an estimate for the US goes as high as 7.6 billion tons of industrial waste produced every year. Most countries have enacted legislation to deal with the problem of industrial waste, but strictness and compliance regimes vary. Enforcement is always an issue in different countries. We will talk about the environmental impact of industrial waste in the slides ahead. Now we will talk about our biomedical waste. See, biomedical waste is any kind of waste containing infectious materials which could be infectious or potential infectious, that they can cause infection in future. So it may also include the waste associated with the generation of biomedical waste that visually appears to be of medical or laboratory origin. For example, packaging, unused bandages, infusion kits, etc., as well as research laboratory waste which contains the biomolecules or organisms like the bacteria and the microorganisms that the scientists work in the laboratory for, that are mainly restricted from the environmental release. Now, discarded sharps are considered biomedical waste whether they are contaminated or not, due to the possibility of being contaminated with the blood and their propensity to cause injury when not properly contained and disposed of. So biomedical waste is a type of bio waste. We call it bio waste also. Now see, this biomedical waste could be solid, it could be liquid. Examples of infectious waste include if there is discarded blood sharps, unwanted microbiological cultures and stocks, identifiable body parts including those as a result of amputation, other human or animal tissue, used bandages and dressings, discarded gloves, other medical supplies that may have been in contact with blood and body fluids, and laboratory waste that exhibits the characteristics described above. So waste sharps include potentially contaminated used needles, scalpels, lancets, etc. So everything comes under biomedical waste. Now talking about the source of this waste. See, biomedical waste is generated from biological and medical sources and activities. These activities include such as diagnosis, prevention, treatment of diseases. Common generators or producers of this waste include hospitals, health clinics, nursing homes, etc. So biomedical waste is distinct from your normal trash or general waste, and it differs from other types of hazardous waste also, such as chemical, radioactive or universal industrial waste. Medical facilities generate waste, hazardous chemicals and radioactive materials sometimes. While such wastes are normally not infectious, they require proper disposal. Some wastes are considered multi-hazardous, such as tissue samples which are preserved in formalin. Now again and again we are talking about the hazardous waste. So what is this hazardous waste? Hazardous waste is the waste that has substantial or potential threats to public health, that the health of the public could be affected or the environment could be harmed. Now there are characteristics for this hazardous waste materials that are known or tested to exhibit one or more of the following hazardous traits. It could be ignitability, reactivity, it could be corrosive in nature, it could be toxic also. Now this hazardous waste, it could be found in different physical states, such as it could be in your gaseous form, liquid form or solid form. So a hazardous waste is a special type of waste because it cannot be disposed of by common means like other byproducts or our everyday lives. So depending on the physical state of the waste, treatment and solidification process might be required to dispose it off. Now let's talk about radioactive waste. Radioactive waste is a waste that contains radioactive materials. Radioactive waste is usually byproduct of nuclear power generation and other applications of nuclear fission or nuclear technology, such as research and medicine. Radioactive waste is hazardous to most forms of life and the environment, and it is regulated by government agencies in order to protect human health and environment. Now see, this radioactivity decays over time. So radioactive waste has to be isolated and confined in appropriate disposal facilities for a sufficient period until it no longer poses a threat. So the time radioactive waste must be stored for depends on the type of waste and radioactive isotopes. Current approaches to managing radioactive waste have been segregation and storage for short-lived waste, near surface disposal for low and some intermediate level waste, and deep burial or transmutation for the high level wastes. Next is your electronic waste, or we call it e-waste. It describes discarded electrical or electronic devices. Used electronics which are destined for refurbishment, reuse, resale, salvage, recycling through material recovery or disposal are also considered as e-waste. Informal processing of e-waste in developing countries can lead to adverse human health effects and environmental pollution. Now, electronic scrap components. For example, there are CPUs contain potentially harmful materials such as there could be lead, cadmium, beryllium, etc. And great care must be taken to avoid unsafe exposure in recycling operations and leaking of materials such as heavy metals from landfills and incinerator ashes. Now see, waste collection is very important part because waste should be well managed. It is an important step in waste management. It is the transfer of your solid waste from the point of use, which is known as source, and disposal to the point of treatment or landfill where it is buried. So waste collection also includes the curbside collection of recyclable materials that technically are not waste as part of municipal landfill diversion program. Next is your household waste. Household waste is economically developed countries will generally be left in waste containers or recycling bins prior to collection by waste collector. So here we are talking about the developed countries, economically developed countries, which segregate the waste at the source. So waste collection barges are used in some towns. For example, in Venice, Italy, they are using the barges. So this is about the developed countries. So talking about the developing countries, for example, in Mexico and Egypt, waste left in bins or bags at the side of the road will not be removed unless residents interact with the waste collectors. Because in developed countries, the waste collectors will come themselves, but in developing, they won't come until the people force them to come. Especially talking about the Mexico City, the residents must haul their trash to waste collection vehicle, which makes frequent stops around each neighborhood. So the waste collectors will indicate their readiness by ringing a distinctive bell and possibly shouting. So residents line up and hand their trash container to the waste collector. A tip may be expected in some neighborhoods. Private contracted waste collectors may circulate in the same neighborhoods as many as 5 times per day, pushing a cart with a waste container, ringing a bell and shouting to announce their presence. These private contractors are not paid a salary and survive only on the tips they receive. Later, they meet up with the waste collection vehicle to deposit their accumulated waste. So, the waste collection vehicle will often take the waste to a transfer station where it will be loaded up into a larger vehicle and sent to either a landfill or alternative waste treatment facility. Another type of waste is your commercial waste. Waste collection considerations include type and size of bins, positioning of the bins, and how often bins are to be serviced. Overfilled bins result in rubbish falling out while being tipped. Hazardous rubbish like empty petrol cans can cause fire, igniting other trash when the truck compactor is in operation. So bins should be locked or stored in secure areas to avoid having non-paying parties playing rubbish in the bin. So the cost of old waste is also a concern in collection of waste across the globe at this point of time. Now let's talk about the classification and treatment. Already we have classified and read about the types of different wastes. Now toxic waste, chemical waste, industrial solid waste, municipal solid waste are designation of industrial waste. Sewage treatment plants can treat some industrial waste, that is those consisting of conventional pollutants such as biochemical oxygen demand. Industrial waste containing toxic pollutants or high concentration of other pollutants require specialized treatment systems. See, about toxic waste, it is any unwanted material in all forms that can cause harm by being inhaled, swallowed or absorbed through the skin. So many of today's household products, such as if we talk about televisions, computers and phones, contain the toxic chemicals. And disposing of such waste is a major public health issue. Now we can classify this toxic material also. Toxic materials, they are poisonous byproducts as a result of industries such as manufacturing, farming, etc. Toxic waste has become more abundant since the Industrial Revolution. Disposing of such waste has become even more critical with the addition of numerous technological advances containing toxic chemical components. Products such as cellular telephones, computers, televisions and solar panels contain toxic chemicals that can harm the environment if not disposed of properly to prevent the pollution of the air and contamination of soils and water. So material is considered toxic when it causes death or harm by being inhaled, swallowed or absorbed through the skin. Now there are certain key substances that pose a risk to human health. So UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme, they have identified these substances that pose risk to human health. Let's start with arsenic. It is used in making electrical circuits as an ingredient in pesticides and as a wood preservative. It is classified as a carcinogen. Carcinogen means cancer causing. Next is your asbestos. It is a material that was once used for the insulation of buildings, and some businesses are still using this material to manufacture roofing materials and brakes. Inhalation of asbestos fibers can lead to lung cancer and asbestosis. Next is your cadmium. Cadmium is found in batteries and plastics. It can be inhaled through cigarette smoke also, or it could be digested when included as a pigment in food. Exposure leads to lung damage, irritation and digestive tract and kidney diseases also. Next is chromium. It is used as a brick lining or high temperature industrial furnaces as a solid metal used for making steel. Then your clinical wastes such as syringes and medication bottles can spread pathogens and harmful microorganisms leading to a variety of illnesses. Then your cyanide. It is the poison found in some pesticides and rodenticides. Rodenticides are which are chemicals used to kill rodents, for example rats, mouse, etc. In large doses it can lead to paralysis, convulsions and respiratory distress. Then your lead. It is found in the batteries, paints and ammunition. When ingested or inhaled, it can cause harm to nervous and reproductive systems and kidneys. Then your mercury. It is used for dental fillings and batteries. It is also used in the production of chlorine gas. Exposure can lead to birth defects and kidney and brain damage. Then your PCBs. PCBs means polychlorinated biphenyl. These are used in many manufacturing processes by utility industry and in paints and sealants. Then your POPs, persistent organic pollutants. These are found in chemicals and pesticides and may lead to nervous and reproductive system defects. They can bioaccumulate in the food chain also or persist in the environment. Then your strong acids and alkalis used in manufacturing and industrial production, they can destroy tissue and cause internal damage to the body. So the most overlooked toxic and hazardous waste are the household products in everyday homes that are improperly disposed of, such as old batteries, pesticides, paint and car oil. So toxic waste can be reactive, ignitable, corrosive. In US, these wastes are regulated under Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. So I'm again and again using these terms. So by reactive, what I mean, these wastes are those that can cause explosions when heated, mixed with water or compressed. So they can release toxic gases into the air. They are unstable even in normal conditions. Ignitable means these wastes have flash points or less than 60 degrees Celsius. They are very combustible and can cause fires. Examples are solvents and waste oils. Corrosive means these wastes are liquid capable of corroding metal containers. These are acids or bases that have pH levels less than or equal to 2 or greater than or equal to 12.5. An example is your battery acid. That is corrosive waste. So these toxic wastes, they cause a variety of health defects in the humans because they contain carcinogens, means they can cause cancer, and exposure to these by some routes such as leakage or evaporation from the storage cause cancer to appear at increased frequency in exposed individual. For example, cluster of rare blood cancer polycythemia vera was found around toxic waste dump site in northeast Pennsylvania in 2008. And even people encounter these toxins which are buried in the ground, in stream runoff, in groundwater that supplies drinking water or in flood waters, as happened after Hurricane Katrina. Some toxins such as mercury, it persists in the environment and accumulate. As a result of bioaccumulation of mercury in both freshwater and marine ecosystem, the predatory fish are a significant source of mercury in human and animal diets. So you can see how this toxic waste can cause health defects in humans as well as it can cause loss of biodiversity also. So all these topics in the series we are discussing are interrelated, that how our climate is being impacted by human activities, how this climatic change is taking place, how our activities are responsible for a lot of human diseases and loss of biodiversity also. So handling and disposal is very important. It is one of the biggest problem with today's toxic material, how we could dispose it properly. The most common hazardous waste disposal practice is placement in a land disposal unit such as landfill, that without segregating, without treating it properly, we just bury it. Surface impoundment or a waste pile, land treatment unit or injection well. This is the most hazardous way to dispose any toxic material. Now let's talk about the chemical waste and its environmental impact. Chemical waste is a waste that is made from harmful chemicals. Chemical waste may fall under regulations also in various countries. For here we are talking about UK. In US also, Environmental Protection Agency and OSHA as well as the state and local regulations are regulating the chemical wastes. Now see, this chemical hazardous waste, it could again be solid, liquid or gaseous that display either a hazardous characteristic or is specifically listed by name in a hazardous waste. There are 4 characteristics chemical waste can have to be considered as hazardous. These are, I have already discussed with you, ignitability, they could be corrosive, reactive or toxic. So this type of hazardous waste must be categorized to its identity, constituents and hazardous so that it may be safely handled. So there is environmental impact of chemical waste also. So factories and power plants, they are typically located near bodies of water due to need of large amounts of water. All these industries and factories are there as an input to the manufacturing process so that they can take lot of water and use it. Many areas that are becoming industrialized do not yet have the resources or technology to dispose waste with lesser effects on the environment. So both untreated and partially treated wastewater are commonly fed back into the lying body of water. So there is a water resource, they set up an industry or a factory there, and later all the wastewater they dispose in the water body. So all the metals, chemicals and sewage released into the bodies of water directly affect marine ecosystem. Ultimately, it is causing the loss of biodiversity in the marine ecosystem and the health of those who depend on the waters as food or drinking water. So a lot of animals must be drinking water from those water bodies, humans must be using. So you can see a wider impact on the environment and humans and animals as a whole of such activities. So wastewater also contains nitrates and phosphates, which often cause eutrophication, which can kill off existing life in water. The term is eutrophication, by which it kill off the existing life in the water. Other environmental impact is your air pollution. This is an obvious effect of industrial waste is air pollution, which result from the fossil fuel burning. It also affects lives of many people. It spreads illness. Over the time, this issue has been widespread. This also affects the quality of soil also, because farmers have to try and deal with this massive issue. In addition, nitrogen dioxide is a common air pollutant found in the air. So these air pollutants have a devastating effect on the human population because it causes sickness. Ammonia also causes a lot of respiratory problems that can be contracted from the air. Illnesses that can occur from air pollution range from irritation to eyes, skin, nose or throat. There is also a chance to get pneumonia or bronchitis, both being very dangerous. So commonly people have reported to have gotten headaches, nausea, dizziness from air pollution. Even World Health Organization has stated that air pollution is the worst risk in terms of human health. Air pollution has been around for a long time. Indoor air pollution is also a risk for humans. This type of air pollution is caused of the burning of solid fuels, mostly from cooking or heating. Next environmental impact is your water pollution. Almost we have discussed about that. Most of the industrial processes, heavy amount of water and the wastewater, they dispose it into the nearby water body. These chemicals which are released in the water bodies, these are usually metals or radioactive material. So this heavily affects the environment because most of the waste ends up in the oceans, lakes and rivers. So as a result, this water becomes polluted, posing a health hazard to everyone. Farmers rely on this water, but if the water is polluted, then crops that are produced can become polluted. This affect the health of society, because if industrial companies can't clean up their waste, this begins to affect the life of humans but also animals. So sea creatures' health are affected because their lives become endangered by this polluted water. Water pollution can have devastating effects on the human body, with the main ones being infectious from the bacteria, parasites, chemicals. So diseases that humans can be exposed from drinking unsafe water range from the cholera, typhoid to giardia also. Next very dangerous category of waste is biomedical waste. We have already discussed about biomedical waste in our previous slides. Now we'll talk about its risk to the human health. See, disposal of this waste is an environmental concern, as many medical waste are classified as infectious. So the most common danger of humans is the infection, which also affects other living organisms living in that region. So daily exposure to the waste landfill leads to accumulation of these harmful substances in the person's body, or even the microbes get accumulated in the body and they grow there, causing various illness. There are various environmental impacts of biomedical waste also. So the first is the syringe tide environmental disaster. So syringe tide environmental disaster of the 80s, it took place in the 80s, raised awareness towards the amount of medical syringes that washed ashore in New Jersey, New York. A similar situation occurred in 2013 also and brought upon Floatables Action Plan. The abundant amount of syringes that washed ashore endangered many marine species and injured humans who regularly visited the beach. After this crisis, many scientists and the lawmakers began creating new mechanisms and enforcing laws that forced healthcare system to process their bio-waste in an environmentally friendly way. Next is the effects of medical waste on the environment. See, this biomedical waste is not limited to the medical instruments. It includes your medicine, waste stored in red biohazard bags, material used for patient care such as cotton and band-aids. The most serious effect that biomedical waste has or on our seas is the discharge of poisons into the water that could then be consumed by ocean life creatures. Toxins would interject into the food chain and eventually reach humans who consume the sea creatures. So human exposure to such toxins can stunt human growth, development and cause many such birth defects. Next is your incineration of biomedical waste. See, the three types of medical waste incinerators are controlled air, excess air and rotary kiln. Controlled air is also known as starved air incineration, two-stage incineration or a modular combustion. So as a result, carbon dioxide and other excess gases are released into the atmosphere. There is a second type of incineration in the excess of air process. Here we are burning up the materials actually. So it has these types of incinerations also have their impact on environment. Post incineration process, the ash is left after burning them. The ash is left. The ash residue is produced and is often disposed at landfills. These landfills are not protected by any barrier and the residue. It has the potential of reaching underground water that is often exposed to human use. So the combustion of plastic materials releases toxic gases that escapes and joins breathable air. So human and animal exposure to such gases can cause long-term breathing and health issues. The rotation of toxic air does not only impact human well-being, but it also impacts animals and plants. So air pollution caused by the incinerators depletes the ozone layer also. It causes crop and forest damages. It increases climatic changes. Constant exposure to such toxins and chemicals in the air could be deemed detrimental to trees. So it can lead to extinction or certain plants in specific areas. So this was about the biomedical waste. Now coming to the environmental impact of the electronic waste. See, the processes of dismantling and disposing of electronic waste in developing countries, it has led to number of environmental impacts. Liquid and atmospheric releases end up the bodies of water bodies. They end up in the water bodies, groundwater, soil, air, etc. And then it is eaten by both animals and human, and in drinking water it causes lot of health defects. Levels of carcinogens in duck ponds and in rice paddies exceeded international standards for agricultural areas, and cadmium, copper, nickel and lead levels in rice paddies were above international standards, and even heavy metals found in the road dust lead over to 300 times that of a control village road dust, and copper over 100 times. So you can see how harmful it is for humans and other living organisms to breathe. Then there are small terms like illegal dumping. Illegal dumping, also called fly dumping or fly tipping. They also have impact on the environment. When we are not disposing things by the national law, we are just dumping them anywhere. So it is the illegal deposit of any waste onto land, including waste dumped or tipped on a site with no license to accept waste. So it can have very bad repercussions on the environment. Due to this illegal dumping, it may sometimes lead to pollution of the surrounding environment. Then other term is litter. So litter consists of those waste products that have been disposed of improperly without consent at an undesirable location. So litter can also be used as a verb. To litter means to drop and leave objects, often man-made, such as aluminium cans, cardboard boxes, plastic bottles. People go to the picnic or anywhere, they just throw things like anything. So all such things come under the category of litter. So it can have environmental effects also. It can have effect on humans. For example, hazardous materials encapsulated within tires and other items of illegally dumped rubbish can leach into water resources. It can contaminate the soil. It could pollute the air. There could be effects on wildlife. Animals may get trapped or poisoned with litter in their habitats. Cigarette butts and filters are a threat to wildlife and have been found in the stomach of fish, birds and whales who have mistaken them for food. Other effects could be organic litter in large amounts can cause water pollution and lead to algal blooms also. Then we have seen marine debris. Marine debris or the marine litter is human created waste that has deliberately or accidentally been released in lake, sea, ocean and the waterways. It has environmental impact also. Many animals that live on the sea consume these float stem by mistake. They think it is the food because it looks similar and they die. So you can see these things are causing the loss of biodiversity also and polluting the environment to the fullest. That is why recycling is very important. Recycling is a resource recovery practice that refers to the collection and reuse of waste materials such as empty beverage containers, the materials from which the items are made. So here till now we have talked about all kind of waste, types of waste and their environmental impact. Now if we talk about mitigation, that we will talk in the last lecture of this series, but you can always suggest the things how we can reduce this waste production and create a positive impact for the environment. Recycling being one of them. Because there are a lot of environmental costs of these things, social costs are there, economic costs are there. That is why resource recovery is very important. Energy recovery is very important. For example, energy recovery from waste is using non-recyclable waste materials and extracting from it heat, electricity or energy through a variety of processes which could include combustion, gasification, anaerobic digestion, etc., which is known as waste to energy mechanism. Then education and awareness. One thing that we are doing on our channel is education and awareness is the area of waste and waste management is increasingly important from a global perspective of resource management. Local, regional and global air pollution, accumulation and distribution of toxic wastes, destruction and depletion of forest, soil and water, depletion of ozone layer, emission of greenhouse gases threaten the survival of humans and thousands of other living species, the integrity of earth and its biodiversity, even the security of nations. So awareness about these things is very important. That is how we can save our environment for the future. So this is all about today. Rest you can comment and tell what solutions do you suggest. Thank you.